You're having some technical issues? Or are you the sitting technician? Yes, you sound overly joyed. Oops.
Why?
Right.
Yes, you. Did you drive down today or?
Oh, yeah.
How was the drive?
It's not bad. I mean, later in the afternoon, if I don't leave till 2 or so, there's really not much traffic. Mornings, coming up from Orange County before noon, northbound all 5 traffic is still bad.
Really?
So it's like another half hour. But last week I drove to Colorado with my son. He was home a few months after graduating college, had surgery on his shoulder, and going back to Denver where he lives. And so we drove last week to Colorado. And as part of that, he bought a book on tape, online book on tape subscription. So we listen to book on the road. And we ended up getting Game of Thrones. Which is 80 hours for one book on a book on tape. Well, I never thought of doing this, so I've kept it. It's on my phone, on my iPad. So I've been listening for the last 2 trips, listening to books on tape. It makes the drive much more manageable. I actually want to be driving to hear more of the story.
Yeah.
I've read part of the book, the first book when it came out, and I've watched the series, but I'm now listening to it after I know who the characters are and everything. I'm enjoying it. So yeah, now I'm looking forward to my driving books on tape.
Well, it sounds like it's very I've heard a lot of people.
Did you ever watch Game of Thrones?
No.
It's very bloody.
I used to watch a lot of movies, and now,
Really young kids, you don't get to do that.
but no. Well, even then, all I watch is sports.
You're sports.
I'm a sports maniac, so I don't watch too many, or else I see the news. I completely, in college, all I read in the newspaper in high school and junior high was sports section.
Oh yeah.
And now, I don't even look at it. I say, oh, it's sports. Oops. Whoops. Oops. Sorry. Now talking about sports, I'm over here trying to do
That's right.
a side swipe. Yeah, so it's interesting how everything changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad nobody was over there. Jeez. Would that be considered a lawsuit? If somebody got into it, would that be a lawsuit?
Sure.
Yeah.
Now we're on.
Okay, we're recording, I think.
We ready for roll call, everybody? Welcome to the March meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission of the City of Ojai. Heather?
Chair McCready,
Present?
Vice Chair Walker,
Present.
Commissioner Basasha,
Present.
Commissioner Boggs. Here. Commissioner Hill. Here. Commissioner Dorner.
Here.
Museum Representative Akins.
Here.
With that, we open our public comment period. I don't have any green cards tonight. If anyone's late and would like to put one in, now's your chance. Okay. We have the minutes of our February 13th regular meeting to approve. Does anyone have any changes or comments on the meeting's
Yes.
minutes? I'm sorry. Commissioner Boggs?
On page 4, number 6, subcommittee reports.
Mm-hmm.
I reported my conversation with Claude Alawar, but I also mentioned that they were celebrating their 100th year anniversary, and would we want to make it a landmark? And that wasn't put into the minutes. So,
Okay.
do you remember me saying that? Yes. On page 4. page 4 of 5,
Okay,
number 6, subcommittee reports, right in there.
thank you.
Rose, did you say that the floor was falling out or something like that?
No, I did not say that.
Oh, next door. Oh, okay.
Are there any other changes or comments to the minutes from our February 13th meeting? I have none.
I would like to make one comment that I was very disappointed I could find no grammatical or spelling errors. That's usually my job.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes
I'll second.
February 13th.
Thank you.
Did we say all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So we go to item number 2, which is a public hearing for design review permit DRP 14-01. Do you have a staff report? Did I skip something?
Well, I think, did you approve the consent calendar with both minutes, or is that meeting to approve both minutes?
Oh, there are 2 meeting minutes, you're right. I jumped.
But
We had a special meeting, and that is the meeting of February 27th. I'm sorry. Does anyone have any comments or changes to be made to the minutes of the February 27th meeting? Or grammatical issues?
It looked fine to me.
Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Item 3, design review permit DRP 14-03, the Chumash Garden landscaping in back of the Ojai Museum. I'm sorry? Oh, staff report?
yes. Good evening, Chair and members of the Historic Preservation Commission. This item is a work permit request for the installation of a Chumash garden landscaping in the rear parking lot and patio area of the Ojai Valley Museum and Visitor Center, which is located at 150 West Ojai Avenue. They are proposing to install a plant collection of museum quality, which would provide a garden area around the existing patio. And as part of that proposed landscaping, they would be removing a minimal amount of the concrete in the patio area. And I've attached some photos to show the areas that are being redone in terms of the landscaping. Staff feels that the proposed landscaping will not detrimentally alter or destroy the exterior architectural features that led this historic resource to being landmarked. So we are recommending approval of this proposed work permit.
Does the applicant have any comments?
The applicant is the City of Ojai on behalf of the Ojai Valley Museum. So Mr. Greg Grant is in the audience if he would like to come up.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. And I don't know if that's working. I guess it is, huh? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and really, it was the museum that wanted to move forward with this project, so the city is just assisting to help make sure it went through the proper channels as far as through the HPC primarily. So I think that some of the people aren't most of the members on this commission part of the board of the museum.
Just one.
1, 2. Maybe one guest, okay, so that's, so I think it's fairly minor. I think there's some question, but I thought we were better safe than sorry to bring this in for consideration. So it's mostly the concrete patio behind the museum, rounding out some of the curves there, and also out in the parking lot area to remove some of that. There's already a planter out there, but it's expanding the planter a little bit And there's been an old rail that's been out in the parking lot for years. You know, it's an old horse rail, I guess, that they use downtown. It's about maybe 25, 30 foot long or so. And we also thought we would mount that up in the back as kind of a guardrail bumper as well, because it's been sitting in the grass there for a long time. So at least it'll be shown a little bit better and maybe a little bit less rust on it. And so I think it's fairly brief. I think Tia Andrews is the lead on this from the museum board. And I should mention as a side issue, they're considering, but we didn't really have anything we could present at this time, to put a temporary shade cloth modeled after the Art Center. You know, they've got those thin cables, and they'd like to have something like that for different things they do in the summertime when it's hot out there. If they could provide temporary shade, they put it up. But that's not part of this, but I should mention they've got that under consideration as well.
And that would be in the patio area?
That would be in the patio area, and there was some thought about whether, if they wanted to put the cables, you know, these would be very thin cables, they might stay up. I think the cables would stay up just like they do at the Art Center, and they might be affixed to the museum, or else they're thinking to avoid that, they could just put up a separate pole, which may not be, they're just kind of working through that idea anyways,
Okay.
and whether or not, so I don't want to divert too much from this attention.
Okay.
Thought I'd mention that as well, that we're not trying to piecemeal it, but they just haven't really come together on a full concept yet.
Thank you.
Ray, can I ask you something? Sorry, that's not on. What is the landscaping going to be?
The Chumash Garden, I think they listed in here, and T had gone through and carefully picked out, it was all native landscaping that was supposed to be native to our local area. And I'm sorry, did we have that in here? But it was originally, it's supposed to be a native garden there, but I think it just has not been well cared for over the years. And so she's talking about bringing back, I think it's really most of the original plants that were proposed there, and just having
Which are local native plants?
local native, and I'm not sure what the connection was. It was supposed to be somehow connected to the Chumash Indians,
Oh, cool.
maybe native
Okay.
plants that they used in particular.
Great. Thanks.
My understanding was part of the purpose in moving the Condor was to free that space so that it could be covered to be used for presenting programs, because those were so successful in the past, the town talks. And I wonder if this gardening will prohibit that from happening.
It doesn't look like it if you look at the pictures.
I think that was part of the primary point, is to make it more presentable, a more attractive area in the back, to soften up the lines.
But we couldn't cover it if there are plants.
Well, they're on the edges of the property, and some of them are further back than they were before to make plenty of room there. Isn't that what you understood?
I think the cover also was only temporary, would only go up for special events. It wouldn't stay up.
Yeah,
So it would
well,
really go up briefly at night, or whatever, in the daytime, and
yeah.
then,
Well, my impression was that it was going to be a solid cover, and it seems to me that might interfere with that, but I suppose we could always take the plantings out if they got the money for the cover.
I think the prototype model, or whatever you might call it, is the Art Center. It's just fairly, we've got the extreme case would be the Libby Bowl, which has, 1.1/8 cables or so for the 90-mile-an-hour wind potential and all that. But on the other extreme would be at the Art Center. They just have very thin cables, and they put it up. I think they actually fold theirs back and leave it there, but this would not be the proposal there. They were talking thin cables and only up for an event. They'd clip it up for the event and pull it right back down.
I was thinking that we were going to go for a permanent roof over that area, because the town talks were extremely popular, and we got a bunch of new members then because of those talks, but because the galleries are always full, there's not a place to have them these days. So that's just my concern, but I'm sure that the gardens wouldn't hold it up. Would they? I'm not sure of anything, but
I think these are all on the fringe. It's not really infringing on that patio area, besides a minimal square footage to round out the edges.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioner comments?
Could I just do an update on
Thank you.
Commissioner Bisaccia? She has worked closely with Lawrence Nicklin and also with Julie Tumamate to make sure everything is Chumash appropriate for the area. There was a garden there at one time, but It just kind of fell out of appreciation. The problem was, as Mr. Mason can say, we were advertised in Santa Barbara as having an authentic Chumash garden. People were coming to see it, only to be told that that publication was out of date. And the cover is meant to slide back and not be there permanently. And the plants are drought tolerant, native plants.
So if you wanted to put a permanent roof,
Right.
Yeah, they haven't really even talked about putting a permanent roof.
because that's the way to get new members. We were talking about it at one time.
So,
I'd just like to state that the director of this project is Tia Andrews, and she's a master gardener, and she's employed other people in her thinking and her plans. You're just going to have the best. It's going to be an outstanding attraction.
You may want to tell her that we have some of the native plants on the ranch. I can't remember the name of the thing that looks like a lily, and the bulb at the bottom was used as soap by the Chumash, and then the roots were used as a
Maricopa.
brush.
Indian soap plant.
No. It's, what?
Indian soap plant.
Is somebody saying something?
Rick knows.
Indian soap plant.
No. That's
No.
It's not Maricopa lily?
Official name of it, but I've got it written down at home, but I don't remember those names. These
Or not-
days.
I said Maricopa, I meant Mariposa lily.
No, it isn't a lily.
What is-
It just has the leaves, and then it has the bulb, and then the brush at the bottom.
Okay,
Sometimes it's called a mole, but
Yeah.
we refer to it as Indian soap plant.
That's because you're not an Indian.
Yeah, well,
There you go.
touche.
Commissioner
I have a question for the city attorney. If I do serve on the board of the museum, am I allowed to vote on an issue like this that affects the museum?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'd recommend board members that are, folks that are on the board of the museum abstain from voting on this.
And I'll push that a little bit farther. I'm the husband of a board member,
That's
and
not a-
so is Pat.
Excuse me, that's not a problem. No, that's not
No
a
problem there, okay.
it's a small story.
It's a small town.
Yeah.
The recommendation from staff is to approve. Am I correct?
Yes.
You have to take a vote.
So, do we have a quorum to vote if we have this many abstentions?
No, you only have one abstention.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move that the motion be approved to build the garden.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
I,
All those opposed? The motion is approved.
One
Thank you.
abstention.
Oh. And with one abstention.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Ms. Waldstein, next we have I guess your report on
The next item will be the city attorney, and he has a PowerPoint presentation, which is going over legal
okay,
stuff.
thank you.
Good evening. Let's see if I can get this working now.
Good both ways.
Here we go. All right. Good evening. My name is Joe Fletcher. I'm the city attorney. I think we've bumped into each other once or twice at council meetings. I've not been before this commission before. I appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you. One of my missions since joining the city has been to do training and orientation for staff and boards and commissions on legal issues. And so I was asked to come and present to you. I didn't want to overwhelm you. I could do this drone on for hours and hours, and that could really shorten your meeting because you all fall asleep. What I'm starting with tonight is the Brown Act, which is the public meeting law. And then at the end of my presentation, we could talk about future training. I believe there's other issues that would be very helpful for the commission. One I didn't think about till tonight was conflicts of interest, and when you must abstain and not abstain, and how to identify a conflict of interest. This is one commission that does conduct public hearings and affects property interests because they do designation or participate in the designation of landmarks, and therefore how to properly conduct a public hearing and make findings and use evidence to make decisions. I think would be something we could also talk about, but we can do this every couple of months or something. And my days eventually over time will do this on a regular basis, and hopefully create a higher level of awareness on the parts of boards and commissions on some of the legal issues you have to deal with. So tonight we're talking about I call it my legal issues orientation. Oh, there we go. This is part one, the Ralph M. Brown Act, and that's Ralph Brown. He was actually the speaker. He was the assembly speaker before Jess Unruh, for those of us that go back that far. Interesting for me was that he was the assemblyman from Stanislaus County in Modesto, where I started my municipal career. He was a local guy from Turlock. And in the mid-'50s, he authored or carried the nation's first Sunshine Act, open meeting law. I also put up there because I remind everybody that this is not the Joseph Fletcher Act. It's, my job is to give you advice and tell you what the law is, but but Mr. Brown's the gentleman. If we want to vent our frustration at somebody, I just want to have you see who he looks like or what he did look like. Again, as like California led the nation with open meeting laws, and this was first enacted in the mid-'50s. Important point I'll make is that this concept of our open meeting law, the Brown Act, is now of constitutional stature. It was originally a statute passed by the legislature, and yes, it was imposed on local government. The legislature isn't bound by these regulations. They meet privately. They can do a lot of things that local legislative bodies can't do. But it has now been in Article 1, Section 3B1 of the state constitution. It's been embodied in there. So the point I want to make is the issue about open meeting laws, the Brown Act, transparency, and how local government conducts business is of constitutional stature in California. So I always advise folks that we're really past the point of debating why do we have to do this. It gets in the way of conducting our business. It's not fair, yes, but it is clearly a cornerstone of California law. And so my mission, my part of my mission here is to get folks to appreciate it, embrace it, because the public expect this of us, and they expect nothing less. So, and very simply stated in Government Code section, it is the intent of the law that public agencies' actions be taken openly and that deliberations be conducted openly. And that's a very important part of this. It means this is not just when you vote, but the decision-making process and the voting all must be done in public. First off, basic rule, all meetings of legislative bodies, will define that, of a local agency, shall be open and public, and all persons shall be permitted to attend any meeting of the body except as otherwise provided. And you don't really have an otherwise provided. City councils, of course, can be an executive session to deal with personnel and legal issues and some real estate matters. Advisory bodies don't have a closed session option. So what is a legislative body? Obviously, the city council, board of supervisors, school board, Casitas Water District Board, are all governing bodies of a local agency. Also, any committee or commission formed by formal action of a legislative body, i.e. Historic Preservation Commission, is a legislative body. Also, that means that any body created by a legislative body, so a committee created by the Historic Preservation Commission, and we'll talk about what types of committees are covered, is likewise a legislative body and therefore must meet publicly and publish an agenda. There's also another rule I don't think we encounter in Ojai, and that the governing body of private entities that are created by or funded by local government, or have a member of the legislative body on their corporate board, also are public bodies. So if you have, sometimes you have a downtown, you have a chamber of commerce or a visitors bureau that gets assessment monies or tax monies as part of their business. When they're dealing with those public funds, they must comply with the Brown Act. So we said all meetings must be open and public. What's a meeting? Any congregation of a majority of the members, for you that's 4, to hear, discuss, deliberate, or take action is a meeting. So again, that's very important to keep in mind, is that we're not just again talking about when you're meeting to take a vote, but anytime, if you, we'll start off the rule, if you look around, you're someplace and you see 3 of your HPC colleagues, some of your alarms should go off and say, okay, wait a minute, is this okay? Because there's, if in any way, to discussing subject matter jurisdiction of your of the body. So it's not just meeting, it's not just voting, it's any time you're hearing, discussing, or deliberating. I'll tell you a case. There's a case. The hearing came from a school district that had the school boards have to approve textbooks. Every few years they approve the textbooks for the district. Well, the members of the school board wanted to meet privately with and get a presentation from the publishers, of the various publishers, on one particular textbook they were going to be reviewing. They were not going to take any vote. They're not even going to discuss it. They're going to sit there and just hear the presentations from the publishers of the book that they were to consider. That was challenged. It was not a public meeting. That was challenged, and the courts held that how the setting in which they obtain information is likewise part of the deliberative process. So therefore, if they're going to receive those presentations from the book publishers, that had to be done at a publicly noticed meeting. Exceptions. Meetings must take place within the city. So you must meet within the jurisdictional boundaries of the city of Ojai whenever you conduct any of your meetings, except to inspect real or personal property which can't conveniently be brought to the city. If you may want to go to Ojai, go to Santa Barbara or something because you want to see a preservation project, some restoration or preservation project that some applicant wants to show you, says, I want to do my property like this. And if it legitimately really needs you to touch it and feel it and see it, and obviously that thing can't be brought here to your meeting, then you may take a field trip and go view it. It's still a public meeting, which means the public has to go along. It has to be conducted in an accessible location. I've done, when I was city attorney of Santa Ana down in Orange County, we were looking at a light rail project, wanted to go see the light rail project in Pasadena, so we rode the light rail from Fullerton to Pasadena and took the public along and got them all passes on the train and everything. So the city council, while they're riding it, wanted to discuss how this looks, how it feels, how it moves through the city. So it can be done. Your agenda is limited to whatever you're observing, obviously. Another exception that might apply to the HPC is participating in multi-agency meetings of significance that take place outside. If you want to meet with a county historic agency or another city's historic group, and both of you obviously required to meet in your own jurisdiction, then it would be okay to meet in one or the other. So those exceptions do exist. They're rare, but again, otherwise you must meet within the city limits. The agenda process. Remember the other rule of the Brown Act is there must be a posted agenda which has a brief, reasonable description of each item of business to be transacted. This important point I want to make here is sometimes you get challenged. There's an item on your agenda, and say, let's say it's take an approval of a landmarking project. Staff's recommendation is to approve, or the other way around, and you take an opposite action than was recommended. People at times have challenged that, say, hey, that wasn't on the agenda. The agenda said you're going to approve this. It's the business being conducted, not the vote you're going to take. You have full discretion once you convene a proper meeting to make whatever decision you want to make, whether it's approving, denying, continuing, whatever it might be. But again, the agenda notice must be reasonably brief and reasonably descriptive. That's all it means. So that that's really a sniff test, a common sense test. You look at the agenda, when you're discussing the item, would someone reading this agenda realize they probably want to come here and participate in whatever we're doing? Regular meetings, like tonight, must be posted 72 hours in advance. We post them, I think, on the front door of City Hall, and I think at the library or the post office. They don't have to be placed online. Then unfortunately, the Act doesn't recognize online posting yet as an official form of, it's obviously everyone does it now, but it doesn't count as posting. 72 hours in advance. If you call a special meeting, it only has to be posted 24 hours in advance, but a special notice has to be sent to the media that you're having the meeting. Non-agenda items. You may not discuss or take action on anything that's not on the agenda, except you have a public comment, either a member of the body brings something up they want to talk about, or a member of the public brings up a public comment that you want to, folks want to engage, the public wants to engage you. They bring up an issue they want you to take up. You can, as you see in city council all the time, you can make brief comments, you can ask questions, and you can take action necessary to agendize it for a future meeting. The point being is that you can't commit yourself to something in advance without it getting agendized. Second one is a very rare case of an emergency. You need a super majority vote. If there's a legal need to take action, you have to do something before the next meeting, and the knowledge, not just your knowledge to the agency that the action had to be taken was not available at agenda posting time. So unfortunately, they impute the knowledge of the staff to the body. It's not even none of you knew that we had to take up this issue. But if staff was aware of it more than 72 hours in advance, it doesn't qualify for the emergency. And it has to, again, be an emergency and something that must be taken. Some sort of legal compelling requirement that allows you to agendize it. Whoops, okay. Now she didn't tell me how to go.
Use the back one.
Here we go. Let's go back. Oh, went the wrong way. Oh, I apologize. I'm going to start over again on this.
I got it. Let me do it.
Okay. Okay, stop there. I'll skip ahead. There we go. Okay. There we go. What is an action? An action, wait, did I see if I got the right one there. Can we go back? Can you go back one? I want to make sure I did this. We got that. Okay, good. All right. So, what is an action? An action is any decision made by a majority of the members of the commission. It's also a promise to make made by a majority of the members, and I'll talk about serial meetings and unofficial meetings. So, if people meet in advance of the meeting and make any sort of commitment to do something, an action's been taken, and that would be a violation of the Brown Act. And of course, an actual vote is part of an action. As we discussed, another major component of the Brown Act, what is a meeting, agendas, public comment. The Brown Act says that the public is entitled to a meaningful participation in the meeting. The meeting, a meeting of a legislative body here is not a town hall meeting. It's not a public forum. It is a meeting of a legislative body, and the courts have recognized time and again, the main purpose of this meeting is to conduct the business of this body. However, the Brown Act has also said that the public is entitled to participate, and we must allow the public to address the body. That doesn't mean that there's an obligation or is even worthwhile or even desired to get into public debate with members of the public over issues. That's why the Brown exception says someone brings something up. If you really want to discuss it and debate it, you need to agendize it for another meeting. But the public's opportunity to participate must be meaningful public comment. There are a lot of cases that come down over the years dealing with activists and gadflies, folks that can become very combative with city councils and legislative bodies. The courts have said you can limit profanity, you can limit fighting words, you can limit threats of violence You can limit personal attacks. It's our rules and most agency rules, since this is a meeting of the legislative body, require speakers to address the body through the chair, not directly to members of the body. And the comments are limited to the matters of the jurisdiction of the body. So personal attacks on an individual or something about their personal life is not relevant and doesn't have to be permitted. But they must absolutely permit the public to criticize actions, votes taken, and positions taken by members of the body. Obviously, the public comment on an agenda item must be done before or during consideration. Obviously, before you vote, they want you to listen to the public about it. And as you all know, on regular agenda meetings, on regular agendas, the public is entitled to address you on non-agenda items. Non-agenda items within your jurisdiction. So, can someone, this body has something of a limited jurisdiction. Want to come and talk about the park program or the quality of the trolley service in town or the decisions made by the city council on non-historic matters really are not is not in your jurisdiction. You don't have to permit those statements to be made. Now, of course, the courts want us to be liberal in our interpretation, and articulate folks don't have a difficult time articulating their issue into something before that's within your jurisdiction. Here's the big issue that comes up time and again, and is the most problematic, or at least raises the most questions with folks, and that's serial meetings. So remember, the definition is any congregation of a majority of the members to hear, receive, or deliberate on matters within the jurisdiction. Well, the courts recognize, now the statute recognizes, that it's possible for members of the legislative body to communicate among themselves without meeting. The courts first said, and the legislature has now made this part of the statute, says the majority of the members, that's important to keep in mind, doesn't mean 2 or 3 members speaking among themselves, but 4 members of this body, may not use any series of communications of any kind, directly or through intermediaries, to discuss, deliberate, or take action within a matter, within something in their jurisdiction. That's what we've all come to define as a serial meeting. There's really 2 types of serial meetings that have been recognized in the law. One is called a daisy chain meeting, and that's just, we'll go right around the horseshoe. Commissioner A contacts Commissioner B, talks about an upcoming agenda item, perhaps usually is what this talks about. They discuss the pros and cons, and usually there's an advocacy piece in here. I want you to support me on this issue, or I want to tell you why I think your position isn't really a great thing to do. I want you to change your position. And then member B then meets with member C and says, I was just talking to member A, and we really want to, we really don't like this idea, or we do like this idea. We like to have your support. Now, so far, we don't have a congregational majority of the members. We got 3 people. 3 people have all agreed that they're all going to take a position for or against, or at least they've received information and advocacy about it. Now, member C goes to member D, says, I've talked to A and B, Brown Act violation. And so be very wary of that. I talked to somebody, I've talked to colleague A, and I want to, that process, again, remember keeping deliberations, receiving information, or decision-making outside of this room is not permitted. So you really, any communication among individuals on this body about agenda matters or upcoming agenda matters should be very, very limited. And you really need to focus it. If someone comes to you and says, I want to talk to you about this, look, let's take it up at the meeting. If you have questions, go talk to Heather, talk to the manager, talk to the community development director, but let's not discuss it among ourselves. So that's the daisy chain. The trickier one.
Pardon me.
Yeah, sure. Please
Can
go
I
ahead.
interrupt you with a
question?
question?
Yeah, I should have said this is. I want to do this as a seminar. So if anything pops in your head, stop me.
Okay.
I have contacted other commissioners prior to one of our meetings to discuss an agenda item, not to proselytize or one way or another, but to discuss it, and left it at that. Now that doesn't.
If it's
that wouldn't be a violation.
There's 2 elements. One is, remember, this must be a communication among a majority of members. maybe 4 people involved in this string of communications. And secondly, all the members the positions of each person must be conveyed. And I'll get into some other exceptions. A one-way communication. Back in the days before email, if you had an issue with something coming up, you really wanted, before the meeting came, you wanted someone to really, and want your colleagues to hear your position on this. Assuming we're not in a public hearing setting, because we got due process issues about communications outside of a public hearing, but assume it's not a public hearing issue. You'd send a memo. It's a one-way communication. Dear colleagues, I want you to know this information. I've been thinking about this, and I want you guys all to know where I stand on this before we go into the room tonight. It's a memo. It's a one-way communication. There's no way to no one else. That doesn't become a daisy chain communication where anybody else's position is conveyed. We'll get into a moment. The problem is email just blows that apart. Not our fault, but that's what happens. Yeah. So, and like I said, I'm not discussing due process tonight and public hearing process, but that overlays a lot of what you do, which is not Brown Act. It's due process and property interests, and how to conduct a public hearing. And that's another reason why you shouldn't have any conversations on a public hearing item outside. But we can discuss it more tonight, and I think I'd bring that back. I have a longer presentation on how to conduct public hearings and take evidence. Yes, sir.
Yes. We have kind of a unique situation on this commission in the fact that we're down 1 as far as our total numbers. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about the daisy chain business. I can see this happening very easily. When do we stop? We are 6. Do we stop at, is 3 still okay? We're at a split. We're not, there's no majority there when you go to 3.
I think 3. I think in that situation, if you only have 3 active members, I think if the facts came out, a communication like that, I think you could have a potential violation because a quorum is only 4 members.
Right.
So you have 3 people. Would be a majority of the people actually voting. So you have 4 people vote, 3 of whom have all met privately. Let's be really conspiratorial about it. They met privately and all agreed to do something and not tell anybody else what they were going to do. That's now a majority of them. That's a majority of the vote. And if we go back to the purpose of the statute, which is the fact getting and deliberative process supposed to take place here, I'd say yeah.
That would be a violation.
I think that could constitute a violation.
Okay, and to further extend that, one of the things that we do to manage business, we establish subcommittees. Now, our subcommittees, the rule is that we can't have more than 3 people on a subcommittee. What happens to us when we are at a situation like this at 6 as a membership of our commission? What do we do as far as subcommittees? Do we reduce the size of the subcommittee?
No, let's can we hold it until I get to the committee discussion?
Okay.
I have a whole series of slides on committees. I don't think so because they're supposedly doing business,
right?
Standalone business,
right?
So,
right.
The fact that you maybe have a vacant seat, I don't think necessarily would do anything to the legitimacy of the committee, whether it's a standing committee or ad hoc committee determines whether, again, if it's a standing committee, it has a notice agenda, so there's not a problem.
Right.
But never got that question before. Excellent question.
We don't have to invite the public
to a subcommittee meeting.
Well, let's hold that till we get to the agenda. Let's really hold that one till we get to committees. Let's talk about email, because email is a real bugaboo for folks like me. Not that I, of course, use email. It's that it is the greatest tool we've encountered in local government in a long time to create unintentional violations of the law. If you're all getting together in this, we don't have smoke-filled rooms anymore. Back when we had smoke-filled rooms, you get in a smoke-filled room, you do something in secret, everyone knows we're doing it. Unfortunately, email, absolutely unintentional. It's that send all, reply all thing is just a really, really dangerous tool that is unlike other types of potential violations. So you get my advice. My advice is you shouldn't be emailing yourselves about business. And I'll give you, I mean, I know, and everyone will tell me that's just not how the world works today. I mean, we haven't talked about serial texting yet, or Instagramming or anything else. But the problem is this. So take Chair McCready. I've talked to my colleagues. Is absolutely permissible. Just in the old days, in the memo days, totally okay. Send an memo to all your colleagues. This item's coming up. I want you guys to know where I stand. I'm gonna, kind of, light myself on fire at this next meeting. I want you guys to know why I'm doing this. Don't get mad at me. Probably not how Mr. McCready works, but, and that's fine. Well, now he sends you an email. Now it's a one-way communication. And then Vice Chair Walker gets that and says, I got to talk him out of this. And so he says, just going back, Mr. McCready, I think it's a bad idea. Let's not do that. I think whatever, good reasons, And that one way, that even two people talking, it's totally fine, right? Reply all. Yeah. All of a sudden, now everyone's emailing each other, and now there's and the worst part, we all know this, dating back to the Lewinsky scandal and whatever political business scandal we've had in the last 10, 15 years, those emails are completely discoverable. They're not deletable, and your personal email system and Gmail and Yahoo Mail and everything is going to recreate an absolutely undeniable record of all those communications, and it's all there. So that's the danger. That's why the advice you can get from me is not particularly. It's a very, very conservative advice. If you want to stay clearly back from the line of Brown Act issues when it comes to communicating among yourselves outside of meetings, don't email. At least about agenda items. It doesn't mean, hey, how about a drink Friday night? Obviously, and we'll get to social assemblies also. But if you got something to say about an item on your agenda or an upcoming agenda item, something that's in your business you're going to be voting on or discussing, you really need to keep it personal between less than 4 people. Even better, save it for this meeting room.
We were told before that definitely do not use the reply all, but to send your question to the staff rather than to each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's and I wanted to talk a little bit about the next hypothetical scenario, which is the spoken wheel communications, because that's how staff does come into it and how we can do it legitimately and appropriately. Because you're completely entitled to get information. I mean,
right.
and to ask questions of staff, or even get information from each other, that someone may have some information that you need to help you do your job. This is not. It can be perceived, and some folks will perceive this as a way of preventing public bodies from doing their work. I haven't. It's been a unique experience here. I've been a city attorney for 22 years now. 20 of those as a big city attorney. I was city attorney of Burbank, and I was city attorney of Santa Ana, combined for 20 years. Lots of committees, lots of commissions, but I've never encountered a community like Ojai, where boards and commissions do so much legwork and groundwork and quasi-staff work. And I recognize that's, it's very clear about the values of this community, that folks on boards and commissions here are substitute staff in so many ways, because it's such a small town and so many people so involved. So I'm not here to, my mission is to allow the community to continue to do business as it does it, but I want an awareness on everyone's part of where the problem's going to rise, because when there becomes a controversy about a Brown Act question or a conflict of interest question, it grows exponentially, and all of a sudden it takes over your business if there's some perception of a lack of transparency or worse. So, so the goal is not to prevent you from doing your job. So we're going to talk about hub and spoke. This is most commonly found in the development environment where there's an applicant for an entitlement of some sort, and it would come up with you in the case of a landmark designation or something related to that. And that's where you have an individual who's an applicant or a landowner, or in larger communities where I worked, lobbyists, whose job is to, and this is more at the city council level, where under this Constitution, the public's entitled to redress their grievances, their public officials. So city council members have the absolute right to meet, to be lobbied, to meet with constituents, to meet with applicants, because they're elected officials. Now that constitutional obligation doesn't go to boards and commission members, so you're free not to meet with folks. I'll meet you at the meeting, but I'm not going to have lunch with you. I'm not going to talk to you. If you want to say something to me, say it to myself and all my colleagues at a meeting. But it's not uncommon to have someone like that as an advocate for, or a lobbyist, or just an applicant. So could I just talk to you about my project? And I want to tell you some things I think you ought to know. Well, again, that one-on-one communication, that's totally fine. But they become a hub and says, I had a meeting with Commissioner X, and I told her this, and she told me that, and now I'm meeting with Commissioner Y, and I want to share with you what your colleague said. That can likewise, again, instead of communicating among yourselves, you're using a hub. The other way that comes into play is staff. So the access, that hub could be a commission, one of yourselves, obviously. It could be a staff member or a third party. Well, what about staff and briefing information? And there is an exception for staff briefings. That was heavily debated, actually. And there was a case that came out of Northern California. I think the city of Fremont dealt with the question of, it had to deal with some sort of a grant project, and it was obvious that the city council, the city manager had met with each of the council members, because commissioner said, I met with the manager, and he told me this, and he told me that, and he promised me this, and he promised me that. I know he met with the other, the city attorney's turning white, the reporters are typing vigorously. The problem is, of course, that, staff needs to brief elected officials and board members are entitled to get information from their staff. So the act was actually amended a few years ago to say a staff member may answer questions or provide information if that person does not communicate to members of the body or the comments or positions of any of the member of the legislative body. That's the rule anyway. We already knew. I already told you that was the rule. But there was a perception on how briefings were done that created. There was a perception that this particular city manager had gone way over the line and wasn't just answering questions. He was very stealthily, passing on, how people were voting, so. The legislature wanted to legalize it, but make it abundantly clear what the rules were. And the rules are, again, one-way communications. So if you have something that comes up and you would like this question answered, or you want some information shared with your colleagues, yes, contacting Heather or Kathleen, asking them to either answer a question, research it, whatever it might be, and then share the results with your colleagues. That's a permissible process. And the important thing that staff has to do is when Commissioner X asks the question, hey, tell me about this, and I want you to look into this issue, and then you tell the staff person, I don't like this idea. I think it's a really bad thing. I don't want this to happen. Whatever you might convey. That position doesn't get conveyed back to everybody else. Just the facts get conveyed back. So the information you want to be shared is appropriately shared. It's filtered by staff to make sure that individual positions are not conveyed and that the same information is being provided to everybody. Now we go. Committees. The Act says that aggregation of less than a majority of the members, and I believe the Act means a majority of the membership. That means if we have 7 members, that means a committee of 3 or fewer. Even if a seat is vacant from time to time, I don't think that changes the nature of the committee. It's no longer a meeting of the body. I think it's still, if it's properly constituted, it's still a meeting of a committee. So the Act, what the Act says is any meeting of less than a majority is not a meeting, because you don't have a majority, unless it's a standing committee. What we now define as a standing committee. So in practice, these terms aren't in the act. These are terms that have been developed among city attorneys and public attorneys to try and describe the permissible and impermissible committee process. Any committee, you can form a committee. The issue is a legislative body or not. A standing committee is a legislative body, which means you must have notice public meetings, publish agenda, public comment, all the rules that apply to the meeting of the commission. It's a standing committee if it basically has an ongoing jurisdiction. So if the city council, the city council is a finance committee. Best example, the city council is a finance committee, and there's been one for years. It meets all year long. It meets throughout the year to work on the budget and the audit and all those things. That's a standing committee because it's basically some work of the council has been delegated to that body, and that body does it on a regular basis. So what is permissible non-Brown Act committee, and that's what we call an ad hoc committee, and it's one that.
Can I ask you a question before you get off as a standing committees? What about does this apply also to the location? Does it have to be within the city?
All the rules that apply. It's a legislative body.
Okay.
So basically, an ad hoc. What's not is a committee that lacks those attributes, and what's become, I think, the accepted definition is these checkpoints here. They've been assigned a specific task, not a jurisdiction over a subject matter, but a specific task. They are constituted for a limited period of time, and I don't mean 11 months. 11 and a half months, something less than that, really the time it takes to complete the task, conduct an investigation, work with staff on an ordinance amendment, develop some workbooks or guidelines or something we want to publish to help people understand the process, whatever it might be. A nominating committee is a classic ad hoc committee. So we need to, the Arts Commission goes through, it has all their awards and things they do. So forming an ad hoc committee to go through nominations for a particular action and then they disband, that would be an ad hoc committee. And the elements are, they have a specific task, they have a relatively short existence, really the existence that rationally related to the business, and it's dissolved. I've taken the position that having an annual, just having an annual committee like a finance committee or a budget committee, and they meet for 11 and a half months and then we just change the players, I think that's, in my opinion, that's a standing committee. It's not just changing the players, it's all those other elements together. And if it's an ad hoc committee, it's not a legislative body, none of the rules apply. You can meet wherever you want, meet whenever you want, no agendas, no public comment, because the assumption there is that either they're going to bring their work product back to the entire body where it will be discussed or deliberated, or there's no work product per se that's going to have to be validated. Now, let's see. I think now, if you have particular questions about individual existing committees you have, I'd be happy to take them up now because I don't know what you do. Any questions on that?
I think there's currently 6 subcommittees of the HPC, and each of them have 3 members, but 2 of the subcommittees currently are missing 1 member, which would be the commissioner is not here anymore.
It really have to, and I sense that maybe there's not been full Brown Act treatment for many of these meetings.
No.
You have 2 choices. I think the preferred one from public policy standpoint is to start agendizing those meetings. If you're obviously involved in council meetings and stuff, we had a long discussion about the committee, the process the council goes through to interview applicants for commissions. We just completed that process. The law is very clear in the vast majority of cities in California. If they have the entire city council interview commission applicants, or replacements for, the city council. If someone leaves the city council can appoint a replacement, and I've been through this. Those interviews are done as a meeting of the entire body, and it's all public. If they appoint a nominating committee that is appointed, constituted, and dissolved every time there's a vacancy, that would not be that would be an ad hoc committee and be appropriate. If you have a standing process, and we have, as the mayor and the mayor pro tem regularly meet and interview applicants, we determined that was a standing committee, and those meetings had to be public. Again, many agencies have gotten to the point of just doing it with the whole body rather than trying to do it by committee. So one is to take these committees, and I have a freaky button. They're actually committees, not subcommittees. A committee of a committee is a subcommittee. So they're actually committees, but I know I'm not going to get anywhere with that. But so committees is to just agendize their meetings. All it means is that you don't have to meet here. You don't have to meet in City Hall, although the act requires that the meetings must be noticed at the location. So if you're going to meet at Azu, you've got to post a sign outside. And the facility must be ADA accessible. Probably not a big issue anymore, but we've had some meetings in private homes, which you could do. It has to be ADA accessible because the public has to be entitled to come to the meeting. And just do the meetings in public, obviously. The other one is to reconstitute your committees into an ad hoc process, really focusing on what work is being delegated. And I spent a lot of time with the Arts Commission, with mixed results, to be honest with you, over what to do with some of their process. They do a lot of very much legwork in day-to-day work, and it's challenging to do as a noticed meeting. So in some cases, it's going to be, you can delegate to an individual. One person is never a committee. So the commission can delegate to an individual to go talk to somebody, meet with somebody, do some legwork, and then bring it back to the body for action. An individual is never a committee. So you could delegate work to individuals if there's that type of need.
Is it that it's a committee, or is it the number of people that are on the committee?
A committee is an aggregation of members less than a quorum.
Oh.
So, I don't think it was argued that unless you have a real problem talking to yourself, it's really not an issue of individuals.
For our Ojai Day committee, we don't meet outside of here. We usually do all the preparation and assignments during our regular meeting. Mm-hmm. So that's okay.
Anything done by the entire body here is totally fine. This is only a question when you have a group of 2 or 3 of you that are meeting and making some. Again, we're also assuming there's some business. I'm not sure why you would have a committee that doesn't really have a work product to produce.
These committees do have a work product because they are specific to what they're working on.
How often are those reactive? Only they meet when some applications received or something?
No, it's really more the I guess more on the functions and powers of the commission itself, not really reactive to an applicant.
Let me ask, why use a committee? Why not just...
I can answer that. Like, for instance, I'm looking at the Plaque and Historic Report subcommittee. The amount of dialogue that it takes to go over a plaque and getting the correct historic language and the amount of data that goes into it just would be overwhelming for our commission to have that as a regular part of our meetings.
How often do you approve plaques?
Every time we designate a landmark.
How many times a year?
3
Not
or
that
4.
often.
Occasionally, I'd say. So one of your options is simply say, okay, we're going to do a landmark. And let me take, actually answer your question. Maybe you're going to get to my point.
Yeah, we have also to review the historic reports or write the historic reports. Now, if we're going to write a historic report, what we should do, the person who is writing it then presents it to the committee. Is that what you're saying?
You have a couple of choices, and that's where I was going to go with this. Is I assume one of the big work products that you do is reports or an analysis of presentations on landmark designations.
Right.
And I've been here 2 years, and I think one new application, maybe two in the last 2 years that we've had. Not on like tonight's matter with the work permit, but the actual going through a landmark designation. You could simply, rather than having a standing committee that meets once a year or twice a year or once every other year, simply when an application comes in, one of the first tasks you do is to appoint an ad hoc committee to work on that application. And you know, among other things, you rotate among members so everyone gets to participate. They have a specific task, analyze, you know, the application, or either your nomination or an application for a landmark designation. It's that specific task. You meet for as long as it takes to go through that process, which is not more than a few months, I assume. Sometimes a few months, but and when the work of the committee is done and it goes on the agenda, then the committee is dissolved. And they could have they could continue to say, okay, and if we approve it, you guys will do the plaque. And you're just for that particular property, you have an ad hoc committee that does that legwork. That is a completely permissible ad hoc committee. No public meetings, no public notice. Meet anywhere you want.
Can the ad hoc committees meet outside of city limits?
Yes. You're not a legislative body.
Yeah.
We can meet at your house.
Once you're not a legislative body, none of the rules apply. That's it. So I think when you really analyze it, and you know, you first need to buy into the statute. The idea is that, and take the issue of before I go there. Another way to deal with that is assign that analysis to an individual member, who could meet with the applicant or meet with the applicant's consultant if they have a historic consultant they're working with, or an architect, to do site visits. An individual could do that. They're not a committee either, and they simply report to the body as a whole. But the idea being that if you have members of the legislative body that are meeting and discussing and deliberating and making decisions, and it's not being done in front of the public, the Constitution says you shouldn't do it. So as a first, you got to buy into the rule. Because it is the law, it is the part of our Constitution, it's part of how local government is. The public wants local government to be conducted. And you've heard it, you've done your own meetings, you've been to city council meetings, supervisors meetings. The general public, there's no sympathy.
No.
There's no sympathy. So, I can't get my business done. They go, yeah, so, And then, as I said, when you get into a controversy and even a scandal over a transparency issue, it subsumes the project. All of a sudden, whatever the subject matter was is irrelevant now. It's all the suspicion about what was going on, and it just doesn't. It doesn't get you anywhere. So, I think I can work with Heather. I can work with Kathleen. Work with you. I think there's ways to do all the things you want to do, all that legwork, in a fashion that is fully compliant with the Brown Act, and you can still do what you need to do. It's just a little bit of a paradigm shift. Any more questions on committees? And I can work with you. I could work with an ad hoc committee to talk about committee structure. Let me talk about also what's not a meeting. An ad hoc committee is not a meeting. Likewise, attending attending conferences is, even though all of you are there, you all go to the League of California Cities or any sort of a conference obviously related to the subject matter of this body. It's not a meeting. You're free to go and attend, and the rule is don't sit there while you're at the conference and be predetermining decisions on agenda items. But just the fact that you're all there, my rule, if you look around and see your colleagues, that's when you look around and say, oh, we're okay, we're good. Purely social gatherings. This is a small town. It's probably hard not to wind up with 3 or more of your colleagues at any one particular time on a weekend, I suspect.
Well, we do go on field trips from time to time, and we take the city van. And I can remember last year we were talking about a number of things, and Rob Mullane, he said, I think we got to cut that discussion out because that's going to be a violation of the Brown Act. And we recognized it.
Yeah, I think a field trip, the group, on your subject matter, that's got to be a notice meeting. If it's obviously go some places, again, you can use exceptions for field trips. But purely social gatherings, bumping into each other at the farmer's market, totally okay. When I became city attorney of Santa Ana, way back before the turn of the century, they noticed they had a city council Christmas party. They noticed it as a public meeting. And I'm a new guy in here, and that's the first year I'm going, why are we doing this? Well, because, it's a gathering of, and we can't stop ourselves from, or the public's going to think we're talking business. Well, I went to two, I think after the second year, I went to the city clerk and the manager and the mayor and said, we don't need to do this. I've been to two of these. There is no business. They're at the mayor's house. They're having dinner. There is no business conducted. No one wants to talk business. This is one time where all the left, right, and center all can get together and enjoy each other's company. It's a purely social gathering. The burden falls upon the members of the body to police themselves. But I've personally been through the process. Not a problem. I wouldn't recommend all 7 members of the commission to have a dinner party together because I think you do create some perception issues. But purely social gathering, totally fine. The other exception you might run into a lot here in the Valley is community meetings. Now, attending a meeting organized by the city, so if there's a community meeting, we're going to be getting, hopefully in next year, into neighborhood planning. That's one of the top topics of the city council. And so I've been involved in these where we might have a series would have some meetings out in the various neighborhoods to kick off the community planning process. And say we're in a neighborhood like the Arbolado, we may have some landmark properties that you might be interested in. If it's a city organized meeting, a majority of you cannot attend. That would be, but if there's a school board meeting or the school district organized neighborhood meeting or a neighborhood organized their own meeting, not city organized, but privately organized, that's open to the public, you can attend that. And again, don't talk business, but being present there is one exception. And I didn't put in here about also, as we get into election season, election rallies, election debates, that type of stuff. You also have First Amendment protections of attending things like that. My last slide, violations of the Brown Act. It's really important, the first bullet. A knowing and intentional violation by a member of the body is a crime. It's a misdemeanor. So, I know the rules. Screw it. We're going to do it anyway. No one in this community, nobody in this room would ever do that. But you need to be aware. People said, "Oh, there's no penalty. They might sue you and have the vote undone." That is not true. I don't know if anybody's ever been convicted of this, but this is part of just buying into the philosophy and accepting and buying into the rule. Knowing and intentional violation. Unintentional violation, I didn't know about it. We start, cross the line somewhere in a conversation. The emails, I don't know if the email is ever going to be a case in yet a classic, serial email. That's not going to create a criminal situation. But 2 and 3 are the ones that I care about a lot, and that is an action can be brought. There's certain requirements that you have to give notice. If someone claims a meeting action you took was in violation of the Brown Act, improper agenda, whatever the issue may be, they can bring an action in the Superior Court, and the court could reverse the decision you make. And obviously, we don't want to go through the scandal or even the controversy of that. But the third bullet's the one that I care about and the city manager cares about, is in litigation against public interest litigation against the city, person who brings the action can get their attorney's fees paid. They don't have to win. If they just bring an action and cause the city to change its position, classic case. So there's an issue about whether our agenda was properly noticed. So we were posted. I had back in the redevelopment days, I had a redevelopment agency that met on in the second floor of a building it was a downtown redevelopment association. And it turns out where they were posting their meetings was inside a closed gate, and you couldn't get to the thing to see it. Someone brought a lawsuit. They were right, we didn't know. I wasn't aware where they were actually posting. You couldn't get to see the board where the agenda was posted. We simply changed our posting. We just put up a new board outside where they posted it. We had to pay the person's attorney's fees just in bringing the lawsuit. Because if the agency changes their position as a result of the challenge brought by the member of the public, their attorney's fees can be awarded. And it's easily 50, it's not hard to go to $100,000 if you litigate one of these cases. So a little, we'll all say is a ticky-tacky minor violation, still could cost the city 6 figures in attorney's fees for defending the lawsuit, attorney's fees being paid by the person that brings the lawsuit. So even the littlest thing can have big implications for the city. I'm happy to say I know of no Brown Act cases involving the city of Ojai, and I like to continue that to be the record. So that's what I have. I have other topics I'd love to discuss with you if you're interested in further issues. I think conflict of interest is another thing that you all are presumed to be knowledgeable about, not just filling out your 700 forms, but also property interests and financial interests and participating as nonprofit board members. I have a similar, about an hour-long presentation I can do, and I would also recommend, over the next few months, I'd like to do a presentation with you on public hearing processes, because I don't think people are, planning commissions, they do it every meeting. They're pretty good about how to take testimony, how to make findings, how to establish an administrative record that's defensible in case of a challenge. While you don't make the final decisions, as many planning commission decisions are final, not all of them, but of course none of your decisions are final. You still have a big impact on the process, and you conduct public hearings. And I think it'd be helpful to have a conversation about, particularly how to take evidence and how to make findings, because there's been a lot of discussion about obviously some landmark decisions lately. And a lot of that goes to, I'm not saying anything wrong, but having a good administrative record and making very clear findings of what the decision was based upon what it can help in terms when years later a controversy comes about what was the action taken. Well, did we say it all right? And if someone ever challenges the decision, the important point is what's litigated in a challenge to a decision the city council or this board makes is what's called the administrative record. The staff report, the public comment is called the administrative record. And that's what the court reviews, deciding whether the decision is right or wrong. So building that administrative record is a really important issue, just in terms of having a defensible project decision in the case someone challenges you. Yes, please. Any other questions?
Go ahead, Craig.
I was just thinking it might be helpful for you to go through the historic preservation ordinance with us and just
Absolutely.
help us to see upon what we should make our decisions, and that would be helpful to me.
I'd be happy to. I'll work with Heather and Kathleen and pick a meeting, and come up and do it. I don't love coming up. I live in Orange, I live in Orange County, but the drive is not a big issue. I love coming. I get to go to Ohio every few times a month. Is that a terrible thing to do in your life? No, it's a wonderful thing to do in life.
I had a question about, you were talking about conflict of interest, residency.
Mm-hmm.
If one of us lives within the scope of a landmark influence,
Mm-hmm.
are we to recuse ourselves from voting on that?
Depends where you live. Real quick, I'll give you the thumbnail rule is if you're within 500 feet, you cannot participate. It's presumed if you're more than 500 feet away, then you may participate.
Okay.
We used to have a bullseye rule that was impossible. If it's
Yeah.
more than so many feet, then it depends if it affects the value or not. It was a terrible rule. So the FPPC, Fair Political Practices Commission, who was jurisdiction over this, they adopted a regulation that we call the 500-foot rule.
Yeah.
There's certain exceptions. If you live 501 feet away from a 40-story office building, maybe you shouldn't participate likewise. I've had projects where we've been out measuring down to the tens of feet because the council member was 523 feet away from the boundaries of this development project. And one other thing I'll tell you about now, we will schedule a conversation about that, is there's also the FPPC is available to you, all of us in the public. You can call the FPPC. They have a website. They become a surprisingly user-friendly organization. Weren't always that way. So if you ever have a question, I'm here at any time. Preferably don't call just as the meeting is convening. Preferably you call me sometime before the meeting starts. But if any question about whether you should participate or a disclosure issue with your 700 form season again, I'm happy to help you. You don't have to use me. You can contact the FPPC. They have a hotline you can call during the day, and they have attorneys there who will answer questions on the fly. And then one last point, and I'll let it go. And under that, if you get, the only defense for violating the Political Reform Act, that's the conflict of interest laws, is a written opinion from the FPPC. So what you will hear from me, or maybe from an attorney at the FPPC or a private attorney you talk to, is if in doubt, get a written opinion, because if they say it's okay and it turns out they're wrong, you're immunized.
Yeah.
But because your lawyer told you, or I relied upon the city attorney, that's not a defense, as much as it should be. Any other questions? It's a pleasure. I'd like to spend more time with you. I think there's things I can help you with. I wrote the historic ordinance for the city of Santa Ana when I was city attorney. So I've been through the entire, from the drafting stage, the list development stage, the criteria analysis. We did individual properties. We did districts. We gave away Mills Acts like M&Ms. Santa Ana, if you've been to Santa Ana, has some fantastic architecture. I'll give you one war story in that. There was a woman who wrote a book, the title was 100 Most Endangered Buildings in Santa Ana. And that became the initial list. She was actually the person behind getting the ordinance passed. Well, when we finally got into the analysis, many of those buildings were qualified, but they weren't ranked by any sort of technical, historical, or either historical or architectural analysis. They were, in her opinion, the most endangered buildings in danger of being demolished. Because many, many wonderful old pieces of architecture in Santa Ana that were knocked down, like LA, through the 60s and 70s. So our first list wasn't really built upon a real solid architectural historical analysis. It was a great list, but it was based upon a criteria of those that need to be saved because they could be knocked down any day. So, but I've been through that whole exercise, delisting properties. It's been a challenge. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Waldstein?
Well, I just move on to item 4.
Pardon me?
Do you want to just move on to item 4 then?
Yes.
Okay. So at the HPC's retreat in January, the beginning of this year, several commissioners had expressed an interest in attending the Heritage Conservation Summer Program at USC. I don't know if some of you had attended before, but staff looked into it and talked to the coordinator of that program to find out a little bit more information. Excuse me. So I've attached the class description and the schedule for the architecture program, which will be happening this summer. I believe it's from July to August. It's a several-week course. However, you can take as small as 2-day sections of this program. And it introduces the principles and practices of historic preservation and heritage conservation. And the classes are taught by noted experts from Southern California. And as I mentioned, they can be taken individual as topic seminars. The city has a budget for the HPC for training and education, and that's budget is $2,300. So I've attached that information. I've also attached a list of or details on our reimbursement for meals and lodging, because the classes are down at USC. It may be beneficial if those members that are going to be going are going to stay overnight at least one of the nights. So I wanted to provide all this information to the commission to make your determination on if anyone was interested in going. Staff suggestion is the 2-day session, Thursday and Friday, July 24th and 25th, which runs from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And that's for the conservation policy and planning, which provides an overview of the legal and political strategies for protecting historic resources, which is something we're always talking about. And topics covered will include federal, state, local preservation legislation, CEQA, discussion on Section 106 review, and the crafting of local historic preservation ordinances. So staff just recommends that the HPC receive the information and discuss interest in attending the summer program. And if you have any questions, I can try and answer them.
When we met with the council, did they mention that they had a mid-year budget revision coming up, and that if we needed to exceed this budget, that we could ask for more for that? Do you recall that?
Yeah, I do recall that. Did you have more information on budget requests?
Well, I understand that that's how it's been done in the past practice, is if, if there was a request that went out for additional funds. I also talked to the finance director before we put this package together. I think Heather did also. And I think they would like, I guess the issue was she didn't see that there was going to be possibility of the budget to increase that. But that doesn't prohibit you from asking. That was just what we got out of it when we did our preliminary information gathering, was that she would like you to stay within this budget, but you most certainly can ask council to increase it.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners? I have none. I think it's something we need to look over.
I have a question.
Did you want us to express an interest at this time, or?
I would expect, if you haven't already looked at the information, to take a look at it, and then, I guess, send me an email just to me.
Okay.
And if I can, I think that what's always really helpful is, because the dates are in the dates are in here, that if someone knows that they're not available for those times and dates and times, I guess you'd probably like to let us know sooner than later, because obviously then that does, the pie is divided by the number of people wanting to go. So it makes it a little bit easier for us to kind of get an idea of who we might have to accommodate. And then also, I think one of the things that we'd like to know is given if you're going to go, what your preference is for what days, what seminar, and then whether your preference is to stay overnight. Because all of that has kind of, and I guess maybe all of that kind of factors into how the money is utilized. And I think in the seminar, it says that most of them start at 9, I believe. Yeah. So there is a provision that you could drive, but that might be kind of hard, and you might have to get up very early to make that.
I had heard back from one of the directors of this, and she said that they were trying to aim their first week out of the 3 for people in our position who served on boards and commissions like this. So she was recommending that we take a look at whatever was offered in that first week. And I think she said one of the presenters was that Ken Bernstein that we went and heard speak in Los Angeles. And I don't know which one he's doing, but anyway, she said look at the first week.
I think also the sooner we know the number of people that are going, we might be able to kind of lobby some hotel for government rates or something in the area. I mean, I'm not a Southern California person, but I assume you don't want to stay right around USC. Is that not correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Biltmore.
I think in order for us to kind of move this along and get the best price as we could, as things always, kind of close up as you get further towards the date, we'd kind of like to know where you'd probably want to stay, and then we'd probably want to do some outreach to those people to try to get some hotel rates that are at government rates.
So the sooner you have this information, the better.
I think so. And yes, just so we can do the best for you.
Thank you.
I like the one that has a visit to the historic places. I don't want to be sitting at USC for 2 days.
That's part of a 3-week program.
Oh, that's a longer program?
3-week program.
Oh, well, whatever.
Thank you. Any other comment from the commissioners? Thank you, Heather. Item number 5 is also yours, Ms. Waldstein, regarding the Historic Sites of Merit Outreach Workshop.
Yes, so I put this on the agenda as we spoke at the January retreat, and we talked about the adoption of the attached Historic Sites of Merit list. I know you had your joint meeting with the City Council. You discussed, possible further, more than just adopting the list, what other things can be done. However, one of the functions and powers of the HPC is to recommend adopting this list. And so since it's already been put together, and I think you're already, more than halfway there, I would think the next logical step would be to have this public outreach, inviting these property owners that are on the list. And, any questions we can answer, or, even provide them, possibly information on landmark, whatever, however we want to shape this workshop. And then after that public outreach meeting is putting it on the agenda for City Council to get that list adopted. Now, I did speak with some of my colleagues with the City of Pasadena and the City of West Hollywood, and just how they've handled, historic sites of merit lists, and also the issue that, we've been discussing on properties that are not landmarked, that could come in, get a demolition permit, and there's nothing to protect them. So I did get some feedback from some of those colleagues, and we can discuss it, maybe not at the subcommittee now, but maybe I can bring that back to discuss in front of the entire HPC.
Back several months ago, we had a meeting. There was a public meeting where property owners did come. I'm not sure if that was a workshop for them, this same sort of outreach. I'm not opposed to doing it again, but.
I think this is more targeted, though. If you're just inviting specifically the members that are on that list. What happened to us the last time?
The Blanche Street.
Yeah, we got all these
Valley.
people that were not on this list of our concern. They were reacting to the
Judith Trim report.
the big book,
Yeah.
the survey, and we got bogged down, and we never really did get focused on the sites of merit like we have now.
But I think that meeting was prior, but there was the meeting where I showed the slideshow.
You did.
And there were people in the audience who had been invited by Rob, who he
Maybe.
sent letters out. And
Yeah.
so there were the owners of the various homes had the opportunity to come and express their opinion about it. But anyway, I'm not opposed to doing that again. I think the more education, the better.
Yeah, and probably since it's been several months, it'd probably be a good idea just to do it again right before taking it to City Council, or putting it on the agenda for City Council.
I would advise you then to have on hand a stack of the brochures for the landmarking and the brochures for the Mills Act, that we can hand them so that they go away from the meeting with something that we could answer a lot of the questions that we don't cover during a meeting such as that. Because often you get bogged down on certain details and you never get to the ones that you should.
But I also want to make sure that we don't confuse the sites of merit with landmarking, because there might be people that would be hesitant to landmark their house,
Well,
but might really welcome the opportunity to have it as a site of merit. So
yeah.
I'm a little concerned about.
Well, the ones that want the,
I mean, to have that available.
yeah.
But would you like to schedule a meeting of the subcommittee to talk about the ordinance?
Well, maybe
A new ad hoc committee to work on the ordinance? Or?
we could do it. We could probably, in the past, I think it's just been staff and you to meeting. I guess it just, it's up to the the entire commission on how we can handle that. I'm happy to meet with, just one member of the commission, or I'm happy to bring back a presentation of some of the information I've found through my colleagues at these other cities, and just give it to you as information, and then the commission can discuss, maybe aspects of those ordinances they like, or what they'd like to see in moving forward on.
Yeah, and I like the idea of the different ad hoc committees, because we had the committee to draw up the list, but that committee is kind of continued
Yeah, that's
on,
right.
and we don't really need to continue it because now we're in a different phase.
Yeah.
So
I could see, the ones that are on it are Craig, Rose, and myself. And I could easily see, as he spoke today, how that could become an ad hoc committee.
just for the ordinance, yeah.
Yeah, for whatever specific thing we're going to do with it.
I agree.
And if we're going to, we said that this list, this historic site of merit list, was one that was evolutionary, that we were going to be finding things out about other buildings that aren't even on the list, that we would want to add to the list, and we could have an ad hoc committee to add those to it.
I agree.
Did you want to put together an ad hoc committee, or you want to?
Well, I think we have, in a way. We've assigned different properties to different commissioners to approach
That's
those.
the landmarking.
I thought that was to add to the historic sites of merit. Okay, I'm sorry.
I don't think so.
Okay.
It's just-
That it's a different subcommittee.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You're right.
So however you want to handle it, I can meet with one commissioner, or I can just bring the information back to the next HPC meeting, and then we can decide then how we want to proceed.
David, did you have,
Mr. Mason?
I don't know how important it is, but I noticed a couple little things here I thought should be corrected. Item number 27 on your list of merits. It says, I think it should be listed as, you've got it listed as a Fox House here, and didn't Lorenzo Roberts' daughter marry Mr. Fox, and that's how he lived there and died there and whatever. I don't think that's written quite right. And then when you get down to number 34, the Mowry House, it's all correct except it's George Mowry's son, William Mowry, was the Western Union operator, etc. And it said he served as a city councilman and postmaster. It was George Mowry that served as postmaster and city councilman, not William. The way it's written there, it sounds as though we're talking about William.
okay.
So it
Thank
was George and not the son.
George, it's George, and he's up here on the wall.
Yeah.
So it's William that lived in the house, right?
They both did, actually.
Oh, but you
Yeah,
just
we-
want to clarify which was the one that was the
But it
second
just
council.
sounds like you're talking about William being.
Which one was,
So we just need to clarify who was,
What was the
Cross
comment
out
on?
son William.
What was the comment on number 27, Fox House?
Well, it was the Fox House, but Lorenzo Roberts married the Fox daughter. And then he died in the house and was buried there. I think he'd been moved. but-
And they gave the land for the train depot, the Foxes.
Yeah.
That's why Fox Street is named.
And I question the move to that present location. I don't know where that came from. Because we have pictures of the museum showing it sitting there in 1887. And, but the home of Sarzodi, right below it, was moved. So I wondered if that line perhaps belonged to the next
oh,
section.
I have lots of pictures of the Fox family because they are related to the Clark family. So if we need them to do this.
well, I was just going to suggest that maybe you bring your information to the next meeting, and any of us are welcome to bring information too. And then if we decide we want to pursue a committee, an ad hoc committee, then we could do it at that point. Does that
Okay,
sound-
that works.
Thank you. The arcade pennants, you provided us with the pennant policy. Thank you very much. There was some confusion last time, but I think this straightens it all out, and I also appreciate the calendar.
But you know, one thing I mean, it can't be for-profit groups. Is the Tangerine Group, isn't that for-profit, Pixie Tangerines?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is, definitely.
But I think the group was the
The
Chamber of Commerce, which is nonprofit, and their nonprofit is to support business, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a gray area, right?
Well, yeah, I think that the idea that she presented at the meeting was that her mission is to promote the city and activities that occur in the city that bring tourists in that ultimately then buy a business's product. So I think it's more than just one arm's length away, it's a couple, because she's trying to promote the city and events that go here. And so she's doing that as a nonprofit business, promoting the city, like you said, the businesses. But from what she said that day, it was really much more about, as I recall her saying, she promotes the city and these activities that people think are unique, and that brings the tourist in. And many people know that the Pixies are just unique to Ojai, and that was how she saw it. So I guess it's really up to the commission how they see it.
Mm-hmm.
But she was looking at it as a unique opportunity to bring tourists into the city, not specifically promoting a product and somebody buying that product, but looking at it as a draw.
And I
Where
believe,
do we draw the line then? I mean, that seems, I mean,
well, we did approve for this year for 14 days and to be re-reviewed next year.
Yeah.
So,
One of the things, and one of the point of my question when I asked her, as it was stated in the minutes, I asked her if there was a festival that
Connected.
was revolving, was going to happen. And she said, no, there wasn't. It was just going to be this general promotion
That's right.
during the course of a month. And if they had the focus for an event, I think we'd have less trouble. It would be like the Tangerine Festival or whatever. But to specifically identify it with a commercial product, I think that we're running into a little bit of a problem. Maybe during this year, in between now and next year, that we can resolve that so that we get to the point that would satisfy. And we can ask the city attorney for help in that too. And get him to, so that we can resolve this issue, because it does seem to be in the gray area.
Because it does say it shall not be displayed longer than one day after the event has
Yeah.
ended. And it was always my impression that those were for events held downtown, like Ojai Day, the music festival,
Yeah.
where it kind of dressed up the downtown
Right.
event. And so I was a little leery about something that's just a general promoting, and wanted to look at it further.
Well, that's another reason why they should come back next year. And I think all of the people that hang pennants should come every year, because every time they come, we educate them. And also, they're communicating with the commissioners. And I think that's important. And I don't want to see balloons hanging in the arcade. I don't want to see lamps like the music festival. We gave them a one-year thing, and they just took it forever, and so they're hanging lamps now. And it's tacky. You don't see them hanging from the Statue of Liberty or the Washington Monument. They're a landmark.
If you look at the list that you made up for us, that listed the 70 pennants on an organization, that's the only one that isn't a pinpointed activity. The tennis tournament is specific, the Village of Tales, all the way down to Art in the Park, Ojai Day, all of them. They're about specific situation. This one is not. It's a commercial promotion.
And I think that the action that the commission took was right in giving her just a year. And I think that there needs to be outreach to that, to the individual, to explain to them that if they're coming back next year, this is what the commission is going to be anticipating, that there'll be some activity or something. I think the other thing we talked about was sponsorship, and I think you'll see in the list that it doesn't also provide for sponsorship. So even if you're talking about gray areas, so even if you're a nonprofit, but you're sponsored by businesses, that's not allowed to go on the pennant either. So I think that you are right. They're trying to have a very definite, definitive line that it can't be quasi promoting a business.
And item number 6 there, it says pennants may deviate from the requirements and recommendations of the arcade design guidelines. I mean, is that a good idea?
Subject to approval by the Historic Preservation Commission.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe that just means that whatever design guidelines go into a normal sign in the arcade could be deviated from for a festival pennant. Is that what it means? But that it,
We're talking about pennants.
right, but that there's arcade design guidelines, doesn't that usually just apply to like the fixed signs? And we're saying that we'll allow a little deviation for a pennant, but it has to be approved by this commission, is that?
Yeah, all the other factors, the color, texture, shape, and so on, that has to be approved by us anyhow.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
So what it looks to me, Ms. Waldstein, that there's nothing in here that requires an organization to come back to this commission annually. There really isn't.
Right, but from my
Replace-
understanding, you conditioned it to come back, or what was?
Yeah.
Right, and I'm sorry, I'm going to intervene here, but you do have the prerogative to put that condition on them. I mean, it says.
Which we have for the tangerine.
Right. Compliance with any other condition deemed necessary and appropriate. So you do have, you do have the discretion to do that.
Thank you.
It's not absolute, but yes.
Thank you. Just wanted to get that in the record.
Is this policy set by the council? Are they the ones that approve this and voted in, or?
It wasn't set by the Historic Preservation
Is it a
Commission.
council policy, and do we have the ability to recommend to the council that maybe it only be events that are held downtown or something like that?
I can check into how this was originally adopted and what,
Okay.
if there's revisions that are, if the HBC would like to make revisions to it, how we could do that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
This doesn't limit the number that can go up each year. Does it say that anywhere?
I don't think so.
That's what we were wondering last time.
We could kind of put some input to the council on what we would like to see for the policy and let them.
Yeah.
I was also, if I might, I was also going to point out that the one thing that, when Sherry and I were putting this list together, that we noticed was that it says on a first-come, first-served basis. Even though some people may be under the impression that they may have been doing this year after year, and that everyone knows they're going to come in and get one. So you have, the tennis, or let's just take the tennis tournament. Maybe they've been coming in for years and they think they're always going to get that slot. So you might, if you're going to put something together, you might consider that, because some of the things that have been long-standing should really be factored into those slots, and not necessarily first come, first serve.
And if they have an event going on downtown, that should take precedence.
Yeah, that was my question at the last meeting, is
Yes.
that if you had a specific number, and when you reach that number, and the city decides that this cool event about a yo-yo festival taking place downtown, because that would be so important for the city of Ojai, would that bump one of the other ones that are in the list off because they now exceed the number of pennant hanging opportunities?
No, but I think so there's not a specific limitation on the number, although, I mean, obviously, we wouldn't want pennants hanging there 365 days a year. But I think what you heard from the last applicant last meeting was she really wanted it for a longer period of time, but she knew it had to come down because the tennis tournament was going to go up. So I think that there might be some conflict in certain times a year where there's a lot of activities going on versus the other times of years where maybe it's more dormant. And I think that maybe you might want to consider what you really want to see up there, and if you're advertising an event, really fine tune this down to, nonprofit, city events, the kind of criteria and description that you want, so that staff knows. I mean, we can do a lot of outreach to the public with very definitive rules by telling them, well, this doesn't really meet the rule, if it's really specific in there. And I think that would be good so that we don't end up with pennants up there more often than you really care to.
Well, the way it is now, with 2 weeks, at least 6 times a year, that's like 6 months of pennants up there. And maybe we ought to look in the future to limiting, I was thinking of the banners, but limiting the pennants to 1 week instead of 2. And yes, if somebody comes on and exceeds the number that we've decided, bump them off. Tell them to come back next year.
I really think that the people who I would hate to see any of these people bumped in any way. I think that I don't like the idea of them having to apply yearly.
Yeah.
I think they should be set in stone unless they choose to not function anymore. But I can't imagine they wouldn't.
The music festival, that's why we built the bowl.
Yeah. I mean, look at all these guys. Tennis tournament, Village of Tales, all of these are...
They're locked in.
They're locked in.
The nature of Ojai.
Yeah. But the tangerines, I don't know about that. Whoops.
Maybe in the future, we should consider 1 week instead of 2.
Well, are the events? I mean, Village of Tales, that's 1 weekend, isn't it? Maybe they put them up so that people can be warned and get their tickets. 2 weeks doesn't bother me. Is it you?
Yes, less pennants, the better. I don't want any pennants up there. And I certainly don't want any lamps and balloons and yo-yos and Calder mobiles.
Well, could I just suggest that maybe we put this on a future agenda to look at this policy and make recommendations
Make more
to
time.
the council?
Yeah.
And we've asked you to bring back some information for us about who organized this thing in the first place, and that would be helpful.
Thank you. Committee reports.
I move that we eliminate all our committees.
They're all ad hoc committees now.
Absolutely.
Well, that was always the way it was.
Okay, I guess. Historic plaque. Do we go to that? I mean, I didn't do anything, but
Okay.
things that have really bothered me have been taken care of finally. I mean, we've been working on it for years to get these plaques corrected, and they've gone up. And so I say thank you to the Public Works crew. Okay.
Okay.
I had a question about the plaques. And since we got this alarming email from Sherry today about the gateway, now, Rose, you were meeting with these owners, and you couldn't get them to decide where to put the plaque, and the plaque's still not up there? Is that correct?
Well, I can't see now because there's a 6-foot wall in front of the house.
Oh, you're talking about the house? Oh, okay, I'm
Yeah,
talking
no,
about...
we didn't put the plaque on, the gate has a plaque there, but not the house.
The gate has a plaque?
I think so.
Driven by, I can't find it.
I've never seen it.
The gate and the house are two separate landmarks.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. This is landmark number 17.
Right.
And, I mean, based on that email, I just prepared some information because I don't know if you noticed in the email, he said that nothing, in the absence of any agreement governing the landmark, we assume that we have no specific obligations to the commission regarding the repair, which is not necessarily correct. Because as a landmark, they have a duty to keep it in good repair, and they would need to come to the HPC for a work permit to reinstall it. So I just printed off those parts of the ordinance, to share with you, but I don't know.
So they've been informed, or?
Well, no, this just came up like an hour before the
Oh, right. So
meeting.
So what action can we take?
Well, I would just like to get direction from, I guess, the commission on, contacting the property owner to let them know.
I believe Mr. Voot was on the council at one time, the property owner. Oh, it was his father? So can we send them a letter explaining how they do need to come before the Historic Preservation Commission?
Yeah.
And how they need to repair it, they can't just haul
Yeah.
it off to the dump.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I don't think they plan to do that.
There's a memo guy that drives around.
Yes, U-Haul week or whatever it is.
As far as the plaque goes on the archway, I never was involved in placing that. I haven't.
Darcy was.
I believe Darcy was. I was involved in placing the plaque on the house, and both of us failed. We didn't get any plaques up.
And do we have an update on that wall that was in front
Yes.
of that gatehouse?
No, we have not gotten an update yet.
Well, didn't the city enforcer go there?
Yes, it's in code enforcement, and they've been notified. And so their next step would be to submit for,
They were notified in an official letter from the city?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, the next letter, send from the attorney.
But can they apply for a permit when it's a historic structure?
Well, they would need to apply for a work permit per the ordinance.
Are we discussing this
They
under
they
compliance
can't
review?
amend something that's a landmark without making it clear that it's different from the original. I mean, and that is made to look exactly like the original. So that's,
You mean on Palomar,
You're talking about the wall on Palomar that was put up?
the gatehouse?
the gatehouse.
Yes.
That,
And it's actually not on the agenda.
That's right.
And it's
Yeah, but
not part of this landmark.
We can just get some information to you to put it on the agenda so we can discuss
right.
it.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay,
Public
what's next?
information. Commissioner Basacha, do we have any more friends?
Yes, we have a significant amount of friends on Facebook.
Do we have any frenemies?
friends.
Yeah, legitimate ones this time, not from Tennessee. And that came by me paying for a couple ads, which cost about $80. So that really, ramped it up, and that was Ojai specific. And so now I'm still, evolving the page, but there's a lot more interaction on it, which is what I want to have happen, and people making comments and asking questions, and then, it kind of takes on a life of its own, and then the administrator makes sure it takes a life of its own that's positive.
Rick, are you, with this, are you linked at all to this, the other Ojai? There's a site out there that has an enormous amount of activity going on. It's called the other Ojai.
No, I don't even know about that. But what you can do on a Facebook page, what I can do is I can like something.
Yes.
And then that gets listed on the page, so it's kind of a promotion for, I'm still kind of evolving this thing. I only have so much time to work on it every week, and I usually do it on the weekend, so I'm.
You're on
called
the other
Ojai.
Ojai. Brian's on it.
You can share.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the extent of it on these Facebook pages is there's a little box on one side of the page where, it has other like things that you can promote. And I find that it's a good idea to have things that are similar,
Yeah.
Not dissimilar. What
What are the call letters or whatever you call them?
it's called Preserving Ojai's Past. Yeah. And I've been using, seems like I discovered more photos that you'd given me that I didn't realize I had. So that opened up a whole new treasure chest. You probably didn't even know you gave them to me, but. Okay. So anyway. Oh, I do, indeed. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Commissioner Basacha. Commissioner Walker, Historic Sites of Merit, we kind of did that a little bit.
Right, but I thought I heard the city attorney say that if a committee went on for 11 months or so, it became a standing committee. And so I'm wondering, in light of that, if we don't want to end some of these committees.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of what he was hinting, like the heritage trees and the historic sites of merit? Wasn't he kind of intimating that we maybe don't want all these standing committees and just make them more job-specific?
Seems like
Yeah.
they all ought to be ad hoc.
I mean, we could just
We can't-
bring up specific plaques that we need to do instead of having this committee
Well,
that we.
yeah, I think he suggested the plaques can be discussed when, there's a landmark. If someone's applied for a landmark, then we could form a committee for that job to discuss the historic resources report, to discuss the language on the plaque. But he also said that any of the other committees, he can meet with me, staff, to discuss whether or not they should be, ad hoc or
So many
not-
of
not-
them just keep saying no report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
Right.
there, but they really don't have any business.
Ojai Day is really sort of ad hoc because it's just one
Yearly, yeah.
part of the year.
So maybe the action tonight would be to disband the subcommittees and come back. I can come back to you with a little more information from the city attorney on how we can, handle some of these subjects, like, the heritage trees, which we just had adopted. And I guess
Yeah.
until another tree is proposed to be on that list, we wouldn't need that committee.
Not a standing committee. Not a
And
Yeah, non-standing committee.
didn't I understand, Rob, that would be something the chair would just do? Because I thought Rob said these committees are all formed by the chair to do business. So it's kind of in his court, huh?
Or is specifically one person. He also mentioned that. You could, have somebody volunteer or assign one person to do a specific job.
That's
If
correct.
it was minimal.
So,
Just do a broad sweep and say we have no more standing committees.
so I guess I can do that tonight at this time and
Yes.
dismantle, in effect, what we're calling our subcommittees. And as the jobs arise, then we will form ad hoc committees. Okay. So,
Do we need a motion or does that have to be agendized?
I don't think so. I think you could just make, because it's just his decision, so.
okay, then that is my decision, and it will stand.
Thank you.
Having said that, is there any report from the heritage tree person?
I think we're out of this.
Subcommittee.
And I'll speak with Commissioner Boggs about Ojai Day at
Oh.
another time, unless you have something to say about it.
Do we put up pennants for Ojai Day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to add to that I painted one of those banners, so I hope it won't be a conflict of interest. I enjoy seeing it up there every year.
Oh, okay.
Planning report, Ms. Wallstein?
No, the only report I have is I think there was a question from one of the commissioners about changing the day of the public hearing, and we agendized that for April.
Okay.
Is that still something that we want to continue discussing?
Can I just say my statement about it, not asking for a vote? Rose talked to me, and we, now that Jolene has left the commission, it was because of her schedule that we changed the meeting night that was historic for all the years. I've been on this thing 21 years, and we always had Monday nights until Jolene became chair, and we changed it to Thursday, and Thursday is a tough night for a number of us, and so that's why I brought it up, to agendize that so we could discuss it next.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do that.
So we'll bring it on the April agenda then.
Right.
Thank you.
And that's it for staff's report.
Pending items?
Are we talking about future agenda items?
That was our future agenda item.
Well, I'd like to see the arch of the gateway to Libby on the agenda, the wall of the house, we need to discuss that and take some action, and also the Ojai Theater. They're celebrating their 100th anniversary, and would this be a time to make them a landmark, or do we want to make them a landmark? I'd like that on the agenda.
Well, we would have to write a report then.
I would be willing to write the historic report. That's why I want to find out.
Yeah, because Mark has done quite a bit of work on that.
There's a lot of
yeah.
information in here between Mark and a couple of other people.
Lisa Boyd is writing a massive.
And Elise, yeah, I have information from Elise too. So, but I brought this for Kathleen, if you don't have it.
I don't.
Okay, I'll give it to you.
Elise is going to get together with you.
She's got more stuff. Good. All right,
Thank
I'm
you.
finished.
Thank you. I'm sorry?
Another thing that should be an agenda item, I think, is the wine, the former firehouse. What has happened about that? We wrote to them and they haven't gotten back to us.
I talked to the owner because the man who is running the wine thing is just a tenant. And the letter wasn't received because the owner was out of town for 6 months. But they got my call, which I left on their message machine, and they're very interested in becoming a landmark,
Great.
or having it become an Ojai City landmark as well as a county.
Yeah.
And they're interested in the Mills Act. And so I sent them the brochures and.
Did they get the report that I wrote?
I sent them a copy of a report. I don't know if it was the one you wrote. I took one out of an agenda that we had a while back.
It
when
may
we were
have
considering-
been the one I wrote. I don't,
But if you want to give me a copy of that, I'll forward it to them.
okay.
I have their address, and
Yeah.
they didn't even know that there was a
Well,
report.
I sent the report and everything, and I went to the wine place and got the
address.
address, yeah, so I don't know.
Okay.
There is floating around, of course, the county report.
Yeah, and I relied on quite a bit of their information, but then I added some more, so. I'll send the report to you if you're taking over that project.
Yeah, if you want, I can forward it to them.
Okay. How can anybody be gone for 6 months?
Mr. Akins,
Must be nice.
Mr. Akins, do you have anything to share with us
I do.
tonight?
I just want to give an update on what's going on with the museum. The schedule for opening, there'll be a soft opening on April 19th. On April 26th, 1 week later, will be the OSA reception, which will be kind of the big opening. Currently, for those that have snuck in or walked through on business, where the permanent gallery was, everything was taken out of that, including the horseshoe. They have recarpeted the whole thing. They've repainted the whole thing. It's amazing how big it is when things are empty. There are 4 big items that they're putting in place. I mentioned the carpeting. They're redoing the lighting system within that. They're going to have movable walls. If you're liking anything that Michelle posts to on Facebook, you're seeing these pictures come through regularly. So movable walls that are being put together by Cinnabar. I think they're down in LA. They're kind of set people, and so they'll have the ability to do that, as well as new display cases that are coming in. And it'll be interesting because, again, it'll be kind of a semi-permanent gallery, because there'll be, I think, about 6 different displays, mini displays that are in there. And so it's going to be very nice, very different from what people have seen in the past, and the ability to, for people to actually go and walk around and see things from a 3-dimensional instead of, just looking at a display case and trying to see. So
The way back, the animals and all that is gone?
no.
Oh.
The coyote, I was going to do a selfie with the coyote one day because it's down on the ground. Craig.
Do you want to share with them, in addition to the city of Ojai, who the 2 big donors?
Yeah, it was a couple of things I wanted to just mention again, because we have Councilman Laura here. Greg Grant has worked with us through this whole process. He and Michelle have worked closely, and his support and his efforts and getting all this done, and the city's financial support, both with the initial amount and the subsequent amount, are very well appreciated. People, you can see that from the outside. I think David and I were driving through town today, coming back from a gentleman who has an amazing collection of 84 Olympics that we're going to put on display. But, David's comment was, this is the best it's ever looked downtown. And a lot of that has to do with the city of Ojai, being an impetus for seeing that happen. So again, kudos out to Greg Grant, and a big thank you to the support. We had gone to the Civic Association. We had laid out a budget. We had hoped to get the full amount from the Civic Association. What they came back was, they said, and that was $100,000 to cover all the capital type things. They said, well, we've kind of gone to a matching thing, so we will match what you get up to $50,000, which is all fine and dandy, but your budget just got cut in half by doing that. We were fortunate that Tony Thatcher went out and talked with John and Ginger Wilson's family. All of the kids happened to be in town at the time, and so John and Ginger Wilson's family have contributed the matching portion of that, and so the permanent gallery area will be named for John and Ginger Wilson. And so we're grateful, very grateful to that. And so with that, with their contribution, with the Ojai Civic Association's matching, that's how we're able to afford these changes that have been put in place. And in doing this, I mean, they have, in putting the new carpet in, that meant that they climbed through a hole that was, to me, it looked like about the size of this, and then squirmed underneath to go through all the electrical that was underneath there. So everything has been rerouted. Everything that was very sketchy has been brought up to being safe. Some of the wiring was sketchy. And so a lot of work has been done, and when we open, soft opening, 19th of April, the reception on the 26th, it is wonderful. So,
Thank you. And also thank you for David Mason for your continuing presence. We're not the same without you. Councilman Lara?
Chair McCready and commissioners, staff. Greg's done such a great job. I mean, I really appreciate his work and him being able to work with Michelle and get everything done. And this brings me to the point where when the museum came and asked for money, we didn't have them. We were considering them, but we didn't have them in our budget. So whatever comes, we really look at and we really try to see the value that it contributes to our valley, and that's what we want to do, is enhance the valley no matter what way possible. So for the community, I think that it's important, even though that our staff does give recommendations on our budget, which we do need to do. We really need to go out there and look at things practically. I do invite you to really look at this program for USC. Sorry, I was going to say UCLA. Sorry, USC. So and venture and see what you guys really want to do, and because as a council member, I want to take advantage of our commissioners, and I think our commissioners volunteer, give their time. So the least we could do is give some training, whatever possible way or you recommend it. We definitely want to supply you with that, either with the funding, the assets, the resource, whatever it is. So same going with the Brown Act. If there's more questions, I'm sure that staff is working with the chair or any of the commissioners to see anything that needs to be brought up. Talking about commissioners, 2 nights ago, we were talking about whether we wanted our commissioner to be residents or non-residents. And at the beginning of this discussion, when it was brought up in November, I was more for non-residents being on commissions. But ever since being on the council, I see that there's some commission that has more of a direct impact on just residents. We do have an indirect impact on the county, but sometimes it's a blurry line. And I'll admit that I'm really not sure where the Historical Preservation Commission stands, how well we have a say on historical landmarks in the county, how we work with the county. Is it really beneficial for us to have non-residents on our commission? And I decided maybe it's a good idea to ask our Historical Preservation Commissioner to see what they thought. Because last night we voted to have only residents on the Planning Commission, and there's already only residents on the Appeals Board. So we decided to keep the same for the Parks and Arts, because the parks collaborate with the school district. They're more of a district-wise, and a lot of it lies outside the city limits. And the Art Commission interacts a lot with the school district, gives scholarships. So we thought that it would be great to have non-residents. Now, historic, I don't know when it's going to come up again. I'm not sure if it's going to come up anytime soon, and I did read Commissioner Walker's and Commissioner Versace comments, which I really do appreciate, and I can see where it is a valley, it's an interest of valley in terms of where we are in preservation. So I do appreciate those comments, but I do also invite you, whoever has more opinions, really good reasons, I'm more than open to see where we stand, because we really appreciate you guys and your work. And if you have a comment, I'm more than happy to listen to it.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. One of the things about Historic Preservation Commission, if you look at the makeup of this group, there's many people on the commission, myself, Rose, Pat, these are people that have been on this commission for a long time. And it is a difficult task to go out and find the historians, the people that are genuinely interested in the history of Ojai. And Ojai is just not this little circle that's within the city limits. You go through Ojai, and a lot of Ojai, the city of Ojai, a lot of what we considered Ojai is not in the city limits. You talk about the East End, you talk about going just a little bit north of the Arbolada, and so to restrict it just to residents serving on that, I think you're going to find a dilution of the quality of people that serve on this board or this commission.
And point well taken, and I do, and again, when I look at what really our jurisdiction is, and if how we have influence on those landmarks. And because where I saw the historical merit, I believe they're all in the city. So I kind of tamper with that. I kind of see, okay, do we really have influence in the county, or do we need to get another boards to work with the other boards on creating a landmark or a Mills Act, etc. So that's where just I'm coming from. I understand that there is a lot of richness. I grew up in Ojai, and then I went out to the valley, then I'm back. And I kind of see how sometimes when I was in Oakview, which I still consider Ojai Valley, it puts a different perspective, because a lot of times we had to deal with the county. So and it's just that, but if and it's a perfect example, it's still up for debate. It doesn't mean that it's going to be really, it should be just residents, but that's my only thing that I'm fighting with, and it's a good point to take into consideration.
I'd like to say that, one of the most popular events sponsored by the museum was the Ranchers exhibit, and going out to the ranches, and these ranch people have a lot of old information, about the formation of Ojai. Some of them, we came here in 1868, but I'm not a resident of Ojai.
Mm-hmm.
And
how many of the ranchers are members within the city?
Yeah, none of them are. They're all out of the city limits.
That was the basis for this rich history of Ojai.
And so it would be, I think, a real loss to get rid of me.
No, and yeah, I definitely do, and it's not nothing personal. We would really lose huge wealth and knowledge and stuff. So that's what it's good for me to hear that. It's good really to reassure. If it is very beneficial, we do need to hear that as council members, because we depend a lot on our commission, because it is an advisory board that we take serious their
Does the council ever consider annexing Miners Oaks and Miramani to the city of Ojai?
That's a good question. It's been a question that I've had, but I've never asked it. I don't know. I know when it comes into annexing, we do have to start thinking about maintenance and infrastructure, and I get a little worried because we're having such a hard time to do it right now with the 4.2 square miles that belongs to Ojai. So I don't know how that works, and I think Steve Bennett is doing a great job anyway. So I don't know. It's never been asked, so I don't know if we will or not.
I served on a commission one time that was called the Valley-Wide City Commission, and it was to explore expanding the boundaries for the whole valley. I think it was after the Weldon Canyon thing, where people thought maybe they needed to be more of a valley-wide city. I think they found there were some financial reasons it wouldn't work out, but
like sewers and,
Those other districts.
Yeah, so it was a hot topic. We decided I felt like it was premature to vote on anything with the HPC, especially since we didn't really have anybody representing that commission. And so we just thought as of right now, everything's the same except for planning commission. It's not on our priority list to have this come back, but I'm sure that if it ever comes back, we'll consider your opinions, and we'll make sure that staff works with your commission. And then also another thing that I do want to say, let me look over my notes. Oh, when you were talking about the policy for item number 4 or item number 3, forget about the pennant policy.
Yes.
It'd be good just to, I like the fact that you guys are really involved and you guys really have a strong position, or some of you, and there's still, I feel, some areas where it's open to debate, and as far as keeping it 1 week or 2 weeks or how long we want to put pennants on our landmarks. Another thing would be to work with our commissions, because I feel like the Parks and Recs Commission does support some of these events. So working with our other commissioners would be a good idea. So or anybody else that we might affect, just so that we educate ourselves and we educate each other, and we're not always taking sides. I'm over here and you're over here. So just a thought, food for thought. And then the other thing, I mean, I could go over a list of things that are coming up in the council, but I don't know how much you want to know or if you have any questions.
I have.
Yeah.
We're short a commissioner. When are they planning to fill the position?
I think there's been advertising, and I think they're trying to schedule the interviews March 26th, 27th, 28th. But I got a call today seeing if I'll sit on some interviews, but I don't know if it was directly for this commission or not.
I think the last, I asked the city clerk, she had advertised and no one had applied, and that advertisement is over, and she's going to be re-advertising for the position.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just on the issue I heard on television the other night about electing the mayor, I would have some real reservations about that, because I would be worried that it would introduce a whole new level of politics into local government that I think should be really looked at carefully. I'm not saying I know the answer, but I just think that should be considered. Like, what are some scenarios that might arise when you have people running for mayor, and how's that going to affect the whole political thing that goes on that. So
yeah, it's definitely a hot issue, and I was the one that started bringing it. I'm trying not to be the troublemaker here, but it's my take on it. After seeing how it works in the background, sometimes I feel that there's not that because we have bad council members, including myself. It just seems that there's no continuity, and sometimes when some issues has arise, like the cell tower, there's really no accountability on the council part. So I introduced it. We don't know. It could be that we need to flesh it out a little bit more, and I know that Councilmember Clapping and Mayor Pro Tem Smith actually are bringing it up for reconsideration on the March 25th meeting. I just saw it right now. And so we're going to be talking about it again. But yeah, it is. We do need to have more discussion about it. And I feel like it's an opportunity for us to really dive in and understand local politics and see how all this works. And maybe so it's up for discussion, and I really appreciate it. And I would encourage you to write to the council members, to write to your staff, whatever you want to do. I would really encourage you to do so, because the more discussions and information that we read, the better.
Thank you, Councilman Lara.
Thank you
for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
And thank you for having me the last 3 months. I'm going to be rotating to a different commission, but I'm glad that it's televised. And I don't know if you heard me sometimes like, Mike, because I watch these commissions, and sometimes it's not that I can't hear you here, it's I can't hear you at home when you don't press the mic. So
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
With that, I think we're adjourned.
So Pat, let's see, so if they get rid of the non-Ojai people and they can't fill the one Ojai slot, yeah, that makes lots of sense, guys. Let's see, so they now have advertised twice and can't get anyone to, so yeah, let's just kick the people that are interested in doing it.